The salty breeze, a rocky shore lapped by rolling surf, seagulls shrieking across a postcard sky. This picturesque corner of northern France is a lovely spot to visit. But on June 6, 1944, D-Day, the thousands of men who stormed this beach instead faced destruction. Concrete fortification, miles of barbed wire, and a well-trained army intent on killing all of those they couldn't beat back into the sea. I'm Bill Boggs in Normandy, a place worth visiting for every historic traveler. Our tour through Normandy will begin with Eglise and other key points where paratroopers and special forces units tried to weaken Nazi resistance before the main invasion. From there, we visit Utah, Omaha, and the other landing beaches. And finally, we'll visit the towns and cemeteries where the liberation is still gratefully remembered. Mention D-Day, and most people picture droves of Allied troops slogging their way out of the early morning surf. But in fact, the invasion of Europe began in the middle of the night and miles inland, as parachute and glider troops made daring raids on key Nazi installations, trying desperately to prevent the Germans from bringing up supplies and reinforcements once the Allies hit the beaches. One crossroad targeted for capture by American troops was the little village of Eglise. It's still the same small farm country town today, surrounded by fields of grazing cattle and orchards full of apple trees. This region is famous for its delicious apple cider, which can be found in cafes and roadside stands across the countryside. As you walk these quaint 19th century streets in daytime, it's hard to imagine the blood and the chaos of the midnight battle for this town. The first reminder of that night is a building that resembles a parachute canopy. It's the Airborne Forces Museum, which commemorates the paratroopers who floated into a hail of German bullets. Howard Minoyan was one of those paratroopers who jumped into Eglise on D-Day. Howard, on D-Day, you jumped out of a plane like this, a C-47 Dakota. What was that like?
Well, it's quiet, I'll tell you that. Nobody's talking, and everybody's thinking. They're trying to think of, will my chute open? Will I have a soft landing? Will I land on a building or a tree?
Also at the Airborne Forces Museum, you'll find a Waco glider, parachute memorabilia, and in the garden, a Sherman tank. And it was a few yards from the tank that Howard Minoyan found himself on June 6th, 1944. So Howard, this is around where you landed?
Yep. Just on the other side of this wall. There weren't any hedges then. I landed on the other side. I didn't see the wall. It was the middle of the night. And I took a few steps and I hit the wall and I reached up, came over the wall, and I stopped right here, just in this general area. And now I could see in the darkness a bit. And I started noticing these silhouettes. And it dawned on me, I'm in a cemetery.
No one alive, just the...
No, just dead people. And I said, oh my God, what a bad omen this is. So I reversed myself, back over the wall. I found 3 of my men from my squad. We got together, said, let's go in the direction where the firing's coming from.
Across the street from the museum is a rustic 13th century church that has a special place in history. The church's high steeple snagged one paratrooper as he floated to earth, Private John Steele, an ordeal memorialized each summer when the town hangs a mannequin of the soldier from the tower. He was stuck up there, helpless, for about 2 hours, forced to watch his comrades shot out of the sky. He played dead the whole time so he wouldn't get killed until finally the Americans rescued him. The battle in Eglise raged for hours as paratroopers scattered throughout the area gradually infiltrated the town. By mid-morning, the Americans had routed the last German forces out of the town. As the men of the 82nd struggled for control of Eglise, British glider troops crashed to earth at the opposite end of the battle zone, charged with capturing the vital bridge over the Caen Canal. Today, the area looks much the same as it did that night, with a new bridge that was carefully designed to resemble the old bridge of 50 years ago. Alongside is a rustic cafe still owned by the same French family that lived there when the gliders crash-landed on D-Day. At the time, British intelligence believed the bridge was wired with explosives. Because the Red Beret commandos had been ordered to capture the bridge intact, they had to take the Germans completely by surprise. The pilots managed to crash 3 gliders within yards of the bridge, and moments later the Red Berets burst out of the gliders shooting as they ran. Wally Parr flew in the first glider, and he says the operation worked according to plan. Well, almost.
I was covering that left flank up there with Charlie Gardner and a Bren gun in case the Germans tried to cut across. Somebody else was covering with a Bren gun that area in case. Now, in the meantime, the Royal Engineers, unbeknown to us, we were just doing our own jobs. They had disconnected all the wiring, but had found that there were no explosives whatsoever in the little boxes all along the bridge, or, for that matter, the gun pit. They were found later on in a shed just over there, and it was well padlocked up, and the Germans put them in there every night. Well, as a matter of fact, the Germans kept them in there, and the only time that they were to be put into their active position on the bridge and the gun pit is in the case of a red alert. Well, of course, the red alert never came. We got in too fast.
The element of surprise.
The element of surprise wins battles.
Within 10 minutes, the British troops had captured the bridge and nearby cafe. The hard part, says Wally Parr, was holding out against the immediate German counterattack. The fighting was short but fierce.
There was a dead German laying there opposite the cafe. I looked at him, I ran past, and I ran past what I thought was another dead German. And as I ran past, the moon was out, and I stopped, came back, and it was Danny Brotheridge. He caught it straight across there. I knelt down, and I just knelt down, and he said something. His eyes were open. I said, "I can't hear, sir," and I lifted him up, just like that, and leaned forward, and he gave a big sigh, closed his eyes, and the first man in the invasion of Normandy was dead in my arms.
All told, only 2 Englishmen had been killed and 14 wounded, and the bridge is still called the Pegasus Bridge after the insignia of the airborne troops. Once the bridgehead was secure, the Pegasus Brigade retired to the cafe, where the master of the house treated them to his stock of champagne, a treat you can still offer yourself